Welcome back, Gothamites. If you're new here, hi. I'm London, aka History of Batman. If you aren't new here, I'm sure you're like, where'd you go? Well, I not only moved, but also dealt with other family issues. Honestly, I have just been really busy outside of the world of Batman. I haven't had an opportunity to really sit and do new content for this channel. Sorry, it has literally been a couple of months since you've had like a history video. However, in those 2 months, I was able to put out 2 DC Ambassador unboxing videos, which are both sponsored by Warner Brothers. The last one, which I put up a few days ago, is just in time for the holiday season. It is a Justice League Batman ornament, and I love it. It is already hanging on my Christmas tree that I decorated last night with my family. That's why I had been somewhat gone, if you cared. You probably didn't care, but I just felt the need to give some type of explanation. But on to the video. Characters dying in comic books is practically a joke. Not necessarily due to the fact that we lose the icons that we love, but because 90, maybe 92% of the time, they don't stay dead because comics are magical. And even though this is true, the Batman family in particular, for years and years and years, have suffered many deaths within their mythos. It's as if the Grim Reaper himself is sleeping on the couch at Wayne Manor, being an eternal house guest. Like he's always there. He has his own drawer in the house. Alfred washes his clothes, like he is literally just camped out there. It's like an Airbnb for him. I thought for this video I can do a very Cliff Notes version about all of the different Batman family characters who have been taken out of comics in the most deadly way possible. How their deaths have affected the Batman's universe over the last several decades, and why focusing on this humanity of this iconic DC Comics family is very important in understanding why the Batman and his entire universe is a fan favorite. But before we get into some killer stories, why don't you subscribe to this channel and become part of this wonderful Gothamite community. Now, I'm sure you're like, let's start with Bruce Wayne, because Bruce, for some reason, ever since his Golden Age debut, here and there has died and come back. Like so much so that I've done an entire video just talking about the many deaths of Batman. I'm gonna leave Bruce last and gonna talk about the 1 or 2 more important deaths that he has suffered in his DC history. So we're just gonna talk about the other characters. We're focusing on the comics and the most significant deaths. And I know you're like, there's more than one? Well, for a lot of them they are. So, for instance, our first person that I would like to talk about is one of my favorites, and that is of course Alfred Pennyworth, the glue that holds the Batman family together. Alfred's story goes that Bill Finger, Bob Kane, and Jerry Robinson created the character of Alfred. We don't know his last name yet. In 1943's Batman issue number 16, and it was in the story Here Comes Alfred. And he became the dynamic duo of Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson, aka Batman and Robin's trusted butler, after he discovered their deepest secret. That they are the vigilantes of Gotham City. And in a very short period of time, Alfred actually became a very popular character within the Detective Comics and Batman books. And especially after Columbia Pictures' 1943 black and white series Batman, starring Lewis Wilson as our first big screen caped crusader, actor William Austin, the serials changed his aesthetic and personality to give him a more witty side and just portray the trusted butler that we already have started to love in the comic books. And then of course, William Austin's Alfred translated into the comics, and now we have Alfred Pennyworth. Through most of the Golden Age and entering the Silver Age of the early 1960s, the Batman family started to grow tremendously, adding characters such as Commissioner Gordon, who actually debuted with Batman in Detective Comics 27, but he was added officially to the Batman family later. Also, Kathy Kane, who was Batwoman, and we even have the magical imp Batmite, and even Ace the Bat Hound, because a family should have a nice family pet, in particular a dog. Dogs are just amazing. Entering the early 1960s, DC editor Julia Schwartz wanted to actually condense the Batman family and really just focus on Batman and Robin and bring back more of the detective stories that we saw in the 1940s, which meant that our good old Alfred kind of had to get the axe. For some reason, DC believed that taking away this character would just be a good idea. So in 1964, Detective Comics issue 328, Alfred's tragic death occurred when he was actually trying to save the dynamic duo from being squished by a huge boulder at a construction site. Alfred went on his little motorcycle, moped of sorts, and pushed them out the way, and he took literally a huge boulder to the body and he passed away. And this actually led to Bruce creating the Alfred Pennyworth Foundation, which later in comics you'll know it as the Wayne Foundation. Pennyworth's death in 1964 didn't really last long, especially due to the fact that in 1966, the live-action TV show Batman, starring Adam West and Burt Ward as a dynamic duo, and Alan Napier, who played Alfred Pennyworth in the show, that actually made the comic book readers want Alfred back in comics. So they did this entire story and told you guys that a new villain that Batman and Robin had been fighting for a few issues across Detective Comics, called the Outsider, this huge rock creature, was actually Alfred Pennyworth. And it had to take a scientist and a little bit of some monster magic in order to bring Alfred back to his normal self, because we needed him back because he was so popular on TV that it didn't make sense to not have him in the comics and make more money. I actually think this death is interesting to see in an out-of-universe context, because this will be a very common trend within the Batman universe of someone dying, and then very, very shortly, due to either fans complaining or popularity in other media, that they return. This is the first time Alfred died, and unfortunately I say first time because the next time that he dies in a very, very significant way, like not just in some type of hallucination or a dream or anything like that, is of course in Tom King's 2019 arc City of Bane, where the strongman Bane literally broke Alfred's neck to prove a point to the Batman to not come back to Gotham City. And of course it was all under the ideas of Thomas Wayne, aka Flashpoint Batman, who is also Bruce Wayne's father. So there's just a lot of toxicity going on within that family, because it's Batman, so of course it is. And Alfred is still, he ain't clicking, fam, and I miss Alfred. But I was so devastated that they killed Alfred and let him stay dead, and they're just gonna let the Batman family just fall apart. Because you need Alfred within the Batman family. I don't care what you say, like I don't. Let's move on to another character, Kathy Kane, who is the first Batwoman. So if you need a little bit of backstory on Kathy Kane, maybe you are familiar with Kate Kane, who is the modern Batwoman, but we are talking about Kathy Kane. In 1956, rumors started by German psychologist Frederick Wertham that Bruce Wayne's Batman and Dick Grayson's Robin were actually in a homosexual relationship, which made DC Comics respond with Edmund Hamilton and Sheldon Moldoff's Kathy Kane, aka Batwoman, in Detective Comics issue 233, and she represented both a romantic interest for Batman and a new female hero to add to the Bat family. But as we discussed, by the mid-1960s, not only were we trying to really condense the Batman family, but we also wanted to make it a little bit more modern. And they felt that the character of Kathy Kane, her literally being made to be a romantic interest and not actually a real crime fighter, and I'm not saying that because she's a woman, I'm literally saying like her weapon of choice dealt with like a lipstick and like a powder pat, like stuff that's just not it's not in the crime fighting way. because literally that's not really why she was made. She wasn't made to be a hero. She was made to quiet rumors from madness that wasn't even true. Because of this, she was actually written out of Batman stories. She maybe appeared like once or twice, but really it was as if she didn't exist. And we made room from a girl, Barbara Gordon, aka the modern Batgirl, who debuted in Detective Comics 359 and then shortly became a star in the live-action TV show Batman and was portrayed by Yvonne Craig. And even when you go into the Bronze Age of the 1970s, in particular in the short-lived Batman family publication, I thought that book was fantastic because it had stories that focused on different members of the Batman family, because at this point we started to grow once again and add more characters within the Bat Clan. However, in 1979's Detective Comics 485, we decided Batwoman just had to go again. And the great martial artist Bronze Tiger, who was actually a good character, was brainwashed by the League of Assassins and was told to kill Kathy Kane's Batwoman, and he succeeded, which began a whole cycle of Batman feeling guilty for not being able to save a Bat family member. Now, I'm sure you're like, that sounds familiar. We'll get back to that theme very shortly. Like, actually, the next thing we'll talk about. After her assassination, she kind of disappeared out of continuity. Like I said, she may have appeared here and there in different forms. And especially around 2006, Greg Rucka, Grant Morrison, J.H. Williams III, they all came together to create the modern Batwoman named Kate Kane. And that is the Batwoman that you're probably familiar with. The one where the CW's TV show Batwoman was based on. Well, it's still based on technically, even though I am very excited for the new Batwoman within that show. I know people want to say bad things about Batwoman. I don't know why. It's all Batman things to me, so if it's Batman, I'm not gonna crap on it. I don't know. That's just me, because I'm a Batman fan, so. Batwoman's death was very shocking during the time it was published, but also not exactly surprising, especially for the people inside of DC doing it, because really they didn't want her back in the first place. She really didn't represent the strong heroine figure such as Barbara Gordon's Batgirl that they really wanted represented within the Bat family. But this next death, I think, is probably the one that most Batman fans and fans that maybe aren't even into the comics know about, and that is, of course, Jason Todd, who I think literally has the most fascinating story in terms of coming back into the continuity and literally becoming a fan favorite when he was ridiculed in his genesis of being within the Batman universe. Jason Todd debuted in 1983's Batman issue 383 and was literally a carbon copy of Dick Grayson. He was in a family circus. He was very humble and sweet. And eventually, once Dick Grayson went on to the Teen Titans in the George Perez and Marv Wolfman books, and he took up the persona of Nightwing, Batman didn't have a Robin. So that is, of course, where Jason Todd stepped in. And he officially became the new Robin. Now, all of that was fine and dandy. Like, it was all good. Until Crisis on Infinite Earths happened in 1985, which marked the very first time that DC Comics hit that reset button and rebooted everything, which means a lot of Batman family characters' backgrounds and origins and personalities were actually altered. And one of those was, of course, Jason Todd. He wasn't this sweet carbon copy Dick Grayson that everyone started to really enjoy. No, he became a snotty, rebellious orphan that didn't respect Batman, and readers legit did not enjoy it because for 40 years they were used to Dick Grayson being Robin, this very loyal sidekick to the Dark Knight, and Jason Todd was literally the opposite. He was rough around the edges, but he didn't respect the Batman. And not only did that frazzle fans, but also the writers themselves. That all led to Jim Starlin and Jim Apato's 1988-1989 4-issue arc Batman Death in the Family, where the fans themselves got to vote in and decide whether or not, after Joker beat Jason Todd literally almost to death and blew him up in a warehouse if he survived the blast. And by a very small margin, Jason Todd didn't make it and he died. Literally, for the next plus 10 years, he stayed dead. Now, in comparison to people such as Alfred Pennyworth, he was quote-unquote dead for maybe about 2 years, and even then he wasn't dead. He was a villain. But the fact that they let Jason Todd stay dead across all media, they didn't even put him in the animated series or the new Batman adventures because they thought that the storyline of Joker beating him to death was too dark for a kid's show, which I completely understand. However, they didn't bring him back. He only came back in hallucinations and nightmares, especially with Batman feeling so guilty that he couldn't save his second boy wonder. Like I said, that theme just keeps coming back. You don't get to see Jason Todd again until literally Jeff Loeb's early 2000s arc Batman Hush, and everyone was like, whoa, Jason Todd's back? What a literal flash from the past. Now this literally opened the door for Judd Winnick to write the story from 2005 and 2006 called Batman Under the Hood, where he literally brought back Jason Todd into the continuity as the new Red Hood. Now the original Red Hood was the Joker, which was introduced in the early 50s. Now you can think about how or why Jason wanted to take up the moniker of the man that beat him to death, but that's for a whole other therapy session that I'm not doing right now. And we even get a brilliant resurrection story that involves Superboy Prime punching the walls of reality and bringing Jason Todd back to life and being discovered by Talia al Ghul and then throwing him into the Lazarus pit so he's completely better, and then having a huge vendetta against Batman because he didn't kill the man that killed him, the Joker. Because as we know, Batman loves Joker, Joker loves Batman. That ain't happening. Ever since Jason Todd's Red Hood is the black sheep of the Bat family, but he's still part of the Bat family. Even after being voted off by fans to die, now he's a fan favorite. I literally think that is so fascinating. Another death that I want to bring up, Stephanie Brown, who debuted in 1992 and was created by Chuck Dixon and Tom Lyle. I just want to say, I think Stephanie Brown is literally the underdog of the Batman family. Still, even though she has taken up at least 3 different mantles in Batman's universe, people still don't like her, and I don't know why. She hustling out here to be the vigilante that she wants Batman to be proud of, and yet y'all still don't like her. I don't understand. Anyway, eventually, she became the next Robin the Girl Wonder after Tim Drake had to briefly step down from the mantle due to his father discovering that he was doing all these dangerous things at night being Robin. And Batman was like, I don't really want to train you, but I will, but if you mess up one time, you out of here. And what happened? She messed up one time and she was out of there. Batman literally fired her. He changed the locks to the Batcave. He took her suit and was like, deuce in order to prove to Batman that she was worthy of the mantle. That is when the Batman War Game saga begins, and she kinda messed up an operation that Batman was doing in order to find out the true workings of the criminal underground that was really being headed by the villain Black Mask. Because she was trying to help, she didn't help at all and literally ignited an entire turf war. I mean, it was literally a massacre. People were being killed and tortured, including Stephanie Brown. Once Black Masked men found out that Stephanie Brown was a part of this and knew that she was the last Robin, Black Mask came and said, I'm going to take you, I'm going to torture you, and you're going to tell me who Batman is. And being the good girl, and being the good sidekick, and the loyal Batman family member that Stephanie was, she did not crack. She did not say Batman is Bruce Wayne. She just got tortured so much that she was about to die, and she was taken to the hospital. And Batman was there with her. He told her that he was proud of her, literally the one thing that she wanted, and she died, supposedly. And I say supposedly because literally like a year later in the arc War Crimes, you find out that Stephanie from her injuries could have survived, But Dr. Leslie Tompkins said she could have saved Stephanie's life when she came to the hospital, but she wanted to prove a point to Batman, saying you shouldn't have these kids out here in these streets trying to do this war on crime that you're doing, because it's child endangerment. Now, while she's not wrong, the fact that she let Stephanie die, Batman was like, oof, oof. Of course, that guilt that he had with even Alfred Pennyworth the first time he died, and Jason Todd, and Kathy Kane, and now Stephanie Brown. Anytime someone dies, Batman's heart is just filled with guilt, like, I could have prevented this, I could have stopped this. The same guilt that he feels while thinking about his parents all those years ago, even though he was young and literally couldn't do anything about it. That is just Batman's MO, is dealing with lots of trauma and lots of guilt. But of course, as like any Batman family character, for the most part, Stephanie Brown comes back. You learn that actually Leslie Tompkins did something more. She faked her death. She said this whole bit to Batman saying, oh yeah, I let her die. No, she didn't. She faked her death and healed her back, and then she returned as spoiler. I hate that entire storyline. It is so exhausting. There was absolute no reason to do that. Like, why? So before at least some period of time, Stephanie was thought to be dead, and that riddled Batman. So now it's just Batman big bad at Leslie Tompkins, that's all I'm saying. A next very prominent death that actually lasted a long time and spawned so many crossover stories and arcs within the Batman's world to rectify this horrible death was, of course, Damian Wayne, who is the biological child of both Bruce Wayne and Ra's al Ghul's daughter, Talia al Ghul. Now, coming back into the modern continuity, in the 2006 arc Batman and Son, which was a Grant Morrison and Kubert story, in Batman 655, Damian meets Bruce for the first time, Bruce not knowing that he had a child. Damian, of course, was trained by Talia, Ra's, and the League of Assassins, so he is literally a lethal little boy. And once he has to live with Batman, and obviously he believes that he should be just given the Robin mantle because he is Bruce's biological son, that's just not how the way things work. And Batman has to literally work with him and almost soften him up to show that being a vigilante and protecting Gotham City doesn't mean that you just kill everybody you want, because we're against killing. We know this. Even after Bruce Wayne's apparent death that we will round out with in a minute, to Damian becoming the next Robin when Dick Grayson takes up the Batman mantle, Damian has been in the continuity for a while until the New 52 happened. And in the Leviathan Strikes arc, where Talia has taken over the League of Assassins, and literally, which I was still very shocked. I remember this was 2013. It was Batman Incorporated, issue number 8, and literally Talia put out a hit on Damian through the different clones that Talia made of her son, one of them being called the Heretic. When Damian and the Heretic fight, they go head to head, and Batman is of course trapped somewhere because Talia's like, you can't get to your son, I'm gonna trap you here because haha, I am a horrible person. Damian is impaled by a sword and literally dies. And then there is an entire journey to bring him back to life. Like literally, it takes the entire Justice League. That death, I think, literally was one that kind of shook comic book readers. I just love the fact that in Batman issue 666, when it is envisioned that Damian is the new Batman in this hellish Gotham, when I had my interview with Grant Morrison a few years ago, he told me that he literally thought after that issue that Damian was going to be gone. He was going to kill him off because he didn't even like the character. He's like, this character sucks. This character is a mean little boy. Why would I want to keep him here? But the fans like him. What is it with that? Damian's alive and well, but that death by his mother killed him. Like, that family is messed up. There are other deaths that aren't in the normal continuity, such as Helena Bertinelli, aka Huntress, actually killed by Wonder Woman in Injustice Year 3. Definitely recommend that storyline. And even Tim Drake, who was the third Robin and then became Red Robin, was also in the Injustice 2 books, and he was actually killed by General Zod. And I'm pretty sure in an Injustice story, Dick Grayson dies as well, and Batman is just furious. I'm pretty sure it's Damian's fault. Since those aren't really within the mainstream continuity, I'm not going into full detail about them. However, if you are interested, I'm telling you, Tom Taylor's Injustice run, and also his Deceased run too, is just stellar anyway. Now, Bruce, of course, the main time that he died and it stuck was, of course, in Grant Morrison and J.G. Jones' Final Crisis. It's a doorbell, so hold on a minute. And that is in Grant Morrison and J.G. Jones' arc Final Crisis, and in Final Crisis issue 6, when Batman goes up against Darkseid, Batman is actually hit with one of the Omega beams that he shoots with a gun. Yes, Batman uses a gun, and seemingly he is dead because Superman finds his very, very, very charred body. However, we learn that he was sent into the Omega section, and now we are following him literally going through time in order to go back to the current Gotham City to become Batman again, and that is of course in Grant Morrison's Batman: The Return of Bruce Wayne. During this time, as I mentioned earlier when we were discussing Damian Wayne, Dick Grayson, after Batman Battle for the Cowl, he got the cowl, and this is the second time he was actually Batman, because the first time was in Batman Prodigal right after the Nightfall saga was ended in the early 1990s. He was Batman, and so literally Bruce was dead for over a year in comics, an actual year. Like, that is such a long time for like the main character of a book, of a whole universe, to be dead. I mean, I know the death of Superman happened in the early 90s, but even then, the reign of Superman came right back after, and he wasn't dead for as long as that at all whatsoever. And just quickly, outside of comics, we have seen some of our favorite Batman family characters die, and one of them, since it is Christmas time, and I literally have watched this movie like twice in the last like 2 weeks, is Batman Returns from 1992. Technically, Selena Kyle, when she gets pushed out that window, she dies, but then of course the cats come, and then she comes back to life, and she becomes the sensual femme fatale of Catwoman. In the new Batman Adventures episode Over the Edge, it is seemingly shown that Batgirl actually falls to her death after being hit by a scarecrow. And then of course Commissioner Gordon finds out that his daughter is Batgirl, and then a manhunt goes on for Batman, but we all learn and see that it's an elaborate dream and it's not real, and she really didn't die. When you first saw that episode, I promise you, you were like, oh no, they for sure killed my girl, I need to write in. Talking about these characters dying, what does it mean? Why should you care? Why should you care that in a fictional world a character dies? Because you know in the back of your mind they're probably going to bring them back because these are comics. I think it's really important to look at the fact that the Batman family has suffered loss such as this, because they are all human. The most non-superpowered family within the DC universe, and yet they are quite extraordinary. They still can succumb to their own humanity by losing their life. Like I said, the Grim Reaper, he's always, knocking at that door. He's always there. It's almost a reminder to show that even though these characters are extraordinary and they save literally the universe and do extraordinary things, they also are normal people. I think that makes us love these characters and appreciate them more, because they are like you and me in terms of that we are all human. Thank you guys so much for watching this look at the different times that Batman family members have died in DC Comics. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a bat thumbs up. As always, all of my social media is linked in the description below, including Instagram at History of the Batman. So why don't you give it a follow and become a Gothamite? Check out the rest of my videos on this channel, and of course, please subscribe to this channel so you can become part of this Batman community. It would mean so much to me. I'll be putting out a few more videos before the year is up, so please stay tuned for much more History of the Batman, and thank you so much for watching. Remember, it is all about peace, love, and Batman.